Matt Whitaker, former U.S. Acting Attorney General.
This is such a great conversation about America, our future, what's going to save our republic.
We have a great football player. Matt Whitaker is here. Matt.
They tried to bury me. They didn't realize I was a seed.
It's a touchdown. Whitaker.
Former acting U.S. Attorney General.
Under President Trump.
I'm going to be an unwavering supporter of law enforcement.
Welcome to Liberty and Justice with your host, Matt Whitaker.
Today's episode is sponsored by Save Missouri Values PAC. Welcome to Liberty and Justice. I'm your host, Matt Whitaker. Remember, you can catch us every Friday at 7 p.m., premiering on CPAC Now, and of course, anywhere that podcasts are distributed, like Spotify or iTunes. Plus, everything I'm doing is at whitaker.tv. Well, it is my great honor to have a true patriot, American entrepreneur, and farmer, most importantly, Alfie Oakes with me. Alfie, how are you doing, my friend?
Very well, very well. Thank you for having me. We're checking in here from the free state of Florida. It's been the whole past few years have kind of been insane around the country. I think less insane here in Florida, despite what some of the mainstream media wants to say.
Yeah. Well, and as many people know, in addition to being from Des Moines, Iowa, I spend a little bit of time in Florida and especially in Naples, and that's how I got to know you, because you have created really what I would call a bastion of freedom at Seed to Table, which is a massive, you can't just call it a grocery store because it's restaurants and bars and entertainment and everything else. But that's probably getting ahead of your story, because you started off as a farmer, correct?
Well, actually, kind of and kind of not. So I grew up around small retail markets, like a roadside stand.
Okay.
I actually referred to my father and my grandfather kind of as hucksters. But so I grew up around that and started selling produce, working for my father at that very young age. And at the age of 15, I actually started selling for myself. I started setting up on the roadside and selling tomatoes out of the back of a pickup truck. And I did that until I turned 18. And at 18, I opened up my first retail store. And at 19, I became a first generation farmer. So no one in my family had a farming background. I started farming small acreage, tomatoes and strawberries, mostly for U-Pick. And by the time I was 20, I grew my first commercial crop. I tried to do 40 acres of zucchini, and it actually froze. There was a devastating freeze in '89. So my first big jump out onto that, we had a big freeze. And anyway, long story short, my first crops got demolished. I was young, 20 years old, thought the sky was falling, went to Honduras, bought a bunch of tomato fields out there and got really lucky, made a bunch of money over there, came back here, started farming back in the States at the age of 21. And in 3 years, I was completely bankrupt again. I made almost $1 million at the age of 20, lost it all back at the age of 23. I was back desolate again. And but it's been a good run. But I stayed out of farming for almost 16 years until I got back into it. Now we've one of the largest agribusinesses in the state of Florida. We're farming 3,200 acres right now, and we have the retail stores and processing facilities. We say seed to table because we're very vertically integrated. We're even thinking about right now buying a commercial boat dock with commercial fishing boats so that we can source all of our seafood for our stores and our customers, right here from Florida. There's a decent amount of good, Florida fish coming in, but it's pretty much locked up. Everyone's got dibs on it. So the only way to get in there is to get your own, it's called an IFQ to be able to get your fair share of the fish and have the best quality product. But we're trying to be vertically integrated where we grow everything. We have 70 milk cows where we get the raw milk from. But what put me on this journey really was I opened this Seed to Table store, which is a 80,000 square foot store that was my life's dream, kind of the combination of all the things that I did. And I opened it up just a few months before the China virus hit. So when it started coming down, I said, we're not going to shut down. We're not going to do any of this madness. I have 5 bars in here. I have full liquor bar upstairs, and all fresh food from scratch. 800 employees we have at this store. I'm at the Seed to Table store actually right now, and I said I'm not going to lay people off. We're gonna keep doing what we're doing. I got a really bold sheriff here in Collier County. The whole law enforcement team here. Actually, we just got voted the safest place in the United States. Collier County was #1 safest place in the country. But we had great law enforcement, and I called the sheriff and I said, listen, I don't know what stance you're going to take, but I'm not going to mask. We're not going to lock down. I'm not going to stop serving alcohol. We're not going to stop having a good time here. And if people complain, then just let me know your position. If you're going to come arrest me, give me a little bit of heads up if you can. But we're going to try to draw a line in the sand here. And it seemed a little crazy maybe to a few people at the time back in March of 2020. But here we are, more than 2 years later. We have 4,000 employees. No one's to hide. We had 8,000 people a day coming through across the whole pandemic. Coming in every single day. Some people were masked, many people didn't, but most people didn't. Most of my employees didn't. But we made national news. It was on Good Morning America, and they were talking about us in Biden's White House press back in June of 2020 about what are we going to do about this place in Naples that's not following the guidelines, and it actually helped business because more people were fired up, and I went out there and met it head on. But it's actually put me in touch. This Naples, Florida has turned into a Patriot Mecca. Simone Gold moved down here. General Michael Flynn moved to Inglewood. We spent a lot of time together. I've had, we're working on a lot of election integrity things with a lot of different people, Defend Florida and Mike Lindell's team, and that's all been based right out of here. And have you down here, and just a lot of great people. I
enjoy my visits down there, and as soon as I started, I took a little bit of refuge when the pandemic hit. I was like, why not? I can go anywhere. Why not go to Naples, Florida? I love the beaches. I love the people. Like you said, it's not only probably the safest community, it's got the best beaches. It's one of the most conservative areas in the country, and there's freedom-loving Americans like yourself. But I think the important thing that, as we were talking recently, that you told me is the fact that Seed to Table was open, and you have to go down there. If you do nothing else, travel to Naples, visit Seed to Table, see what Alfie's got going on there. But you said, really you had so many people come up to you and thank you just for maintaining a community, because, obviously there's a lot of people, a lot of retired folks in Naples, a lot of people that are by themselves in Naples, and they need that community. And I think what you offer there at Seed to Table to so many of your customers and friends and fellow, citizens is really a community to which they can be a part of.
Yeah, when I designed this store, and I believe the hand of God must have been working through me, because when I look at it, I think that it's something bigger than I could have come up with myself, but somehow I come up with the design, really. And it feels like one of the biggest compliments I get here is people come in and say it feels like home, and it is very much a sense of community. And when I was designing this store and building it, I never knew it was going to be more based around about people that love this country, patriot type people, but that's what was in store for us. And through the pandemic, I mean, literally hundreds of people came through that door and broke out in tears because they saw a normal lifestyle. They saw people loving each other, smiling, engaging, happy through all of it. And I even had one pastor that that was arrested in Los Angeles for opening his church, and he decided to make a voyage across the United States. And this was around probably June or July of 2020, and he saw me on some podcast and wanted to come to the store. And when he come in here, he gave me one of the best compliments I could have ever received, or I have ever received. He said that he had actually stopped at 15 or 20 churches on his trek across the country. And when he came in to see the table, he said that he felt more of God alive in our store than anywhere he had been. He said he felt loving people, happy people, abundance of fresh produce and fresh food, and he said that, and we were a beacon at that time, and I'm so happy that a good part of the United States is all back on track here and opened up and doing the right thing.
Yep.
But we were leading it from the beginning, and we did bold businesses for liberty to basically told people, like, you have to resist right now. There's a time, unfortunately, when we have to resist what the government tells us.
And I mean, every citizen needs to, sort of ultimately be their own sovereign, and to some extent. You can't, I mean, obviously the government is going to, do their best, as failed and as horrible as especially the federal government is. But, each citizen needs to not only protect themselves, but, take an amount of risk that they're comfortable with based on their own unique health situation. But who knew that a grocery store, much more than a grocery store, but a grocery store at its essence could be a religious experience. But I love coming to Seed to Table. It's obviously, I now have the great advantage of knowing the owner. But when I was there the last time with you, you had so many just friends and customers coming up and just saying hello, and I think that the goodwill in the community is amazing as to what you've built. And I think another thing that you pointed out is the intentionality of how you merchandise, and the freshness. We were talking about your bakery, and sort of you only have a certain kind of wheat there, and I think you've sort of gone through the entire store and really with an intentional, sort of almost, I don't know if you call it health first, but I want you to talk a little bit about kind of how you've developed, how you merchandise, your produce and your bread and all those kind of things that are the inputs.
Yeah, so I mean, when I created the 80,000 square foot food mecca here, it was in part because I wanted a sense of community, but another huge part of it was that I really care about the health of all of our customers, and it really hurt me to go into almost any grocery store in this country and go in there and see that I personally would not eat 90% of the product that's in that store, because first of all, if you look at the ingredients in what's called the center of the store, you don't even know what half the ingredients are. All kinds of man's chemicals and so I wanted to build this store that was the sense of community, but also we had all of the healthiest food. And healthy food is just going back to what food we were eating, before 100 years ago, up until the beginning of time, was all food that didn't contain, there wasn't Roundup ready genetically modified wheat that's destroying our gut health. Didn't even exist. And I was, as a Clay Clark event on Saturday, explaining to people that a Big Mac that they're eating right now is not the same Big Mac that we were eating when we were kids. The beef has pink slime in it that kills your gut bacteria. The wheat has Roundup in it. It actually causes this. It's actually, I took some to Spain with me in Amsterdam, Holland. They had some DNA machines to test the DNA, and I took some of the Pillsbury flour, and then I took our flour that's from Central Milling. It's organic heirloom flour. And the DNA was 20 times bigger than our own human DNA in that Pillsbury flour. And then the gentleman that was testing it was amazed over there in Amsterdam when he did it. He said that he couldn't even believe it. And then it's illegal to use that flour over in those countries, but here it's okay, and it's doing major damage. It affects your pituitary gland. It affects. It really gives an autoimmune disease to everyone that eats too much of it. So I really want to do everything we do in this store is from scratch. We make all of our soups are from the bottom up. You're not going to find anything with preservatives in it. We make 4,000 or 5,000 loaves of bread every day, and they have zero preservatives. So whatever we don't sell that day, I give to churches and homeless shelters, and then we start the next day with brand new fresh bread again that's made from the right ingredients. And the same thing with the milk. I started learning that most of the milk that almost all the milk in the grocery store is just about a waste product, something I would never put in my body. The homogenized milk is really terrible for you. So we started selling raw milk here, and now I had to keep buying more and more cows because the demand for it, because it's so much better for you. It's the way that we're intended to eat it, and it just goes on and on with so many items. We do all of our fresh sauces and guacamoles, and we have our own we've got not enough chickens to have eggs for everything that we do. For our breakfast, we do breakfast, lunch, and dinner here. We have hundreds of different food options, but for our organic breakfast in the morning, we have our own chickens that have farm fresh eggs. Everyone's asking me to do more of them, but right now we're just trying to grow and have everything done the way that it's supposed to be, and it's been a real blessing.
Yeah, it's an incredible operation, and your care and thought that you put into all the ingredients is comes through not only in the quality of the food, but just the quality of the experience. And obviously, I assume that you not only do you treat your employees well, they probably self-select. If they want to work for a patriot, sort of that puts people first, and then they work for you. If they don't, then they can go, work for certainly any number of your competitors.
Yeah. So one of the concerns I had, we now, since COVID started, we've added 1,000 more employees to our company. So we've had no problem finding employees here, where a lot of people have been, but it has to do exactly like you said. It has to do with our culture, with the way that we treat people. When I made a very firm position back in June of 2020 against the Black Lives Matter. They came and protested in front of our store, and I had to talk to a lot of the employees that I have that are on the other side of the aisle than I am. But I dealt with them with love and respect, and I sat down with every single person that had an issue with the stance that I was taking, and I said, listen, the America that I live in is where I'm going to respect and love you no matter what political affiliation. You can come out there and march in front of the store with the BLM group if that's what you believe in, and when you come into work, I'm gonna still give you a hug, a handshake. I'm going to respect you. You do your job and treat people right. That's the America that I grew up in, and that's kind of what's been lost here is where we can't. If you're on different sides of the aisle, you can't just agree to disagree. And we didn't lose any employees through that process. And like I said, we've gained over 1,000 employees. Our business continues to grow, and I always say that I wish that. Our store is a microcosm of what I would like to see America to be, because we have every nationality of person works here at our store. We all love and respect each other, and it is just good energy around the store every day.
How do we? I think about Florida, where you are, running a very successful business, but you point out kind of. Really, one of my favorite sayings is a Japanese proverb that says, "Fall down 7 times, stand up 8." And like clearly, with your early in your 20s, so you did fall down, and you tried a different way, and again eventually you've become successful. I like to say, you're a overnight success, 10 years in the making, but sometimes people don't see,
maybe 30 years in the making.
People don't see it, the hustle and the hard work and just the desire that it takes. But Florida is obviously did a lot of things correctly as it related to COVID. Your governor took a lot of criticism. Obviously, my home state of Iowa. Same thing, they took a lot, did a different direction than most states, followed a lot of what DeSantis in Florida was doing, and the people obviously benefited, and this economy didn't crater. But how much does political leadership matter to a business owner like yourself? How much does the tone from the governor or the sheriff or whomever your political overlords might be? How does that affect you and your business?
It affects us in that. It was never more polarizing than throughout this whole this whole COVID sham, is how important your local government is, how important that all of the people that are elected and put in these positions, that they actually understand the Constitution. It's amazing how many people that are either in county government as commissioners or in the school boards or even in higher positions of the legislature that really truly don't understand the Constitution and understand the reasons that certain things are in place. But I went to the school. I've been fighting at the school boards, the commissions from several years ago, and I've pledged. I have a PAC called Citizens Awake Now, and we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to put America First candidates in on the local level, and it means everything. If we didn't have good law enforcement here, when the BLM they bust 250 people in here to try to intimidate us, they were giving death threats to my daughter, crazy things. But if we didn't have good law enforcement here, the seat at table store could have been burnt down. I'm sure if we would have been in Chicago or if we'd have been in Seattle or somewhere like that, I think that would have been there would have been no protection from law enforcement. So the law enforcement is very important. And even when we took that stance at the beginning, and people were losing their minds, there was thousands of calls coming into the sheriff's department every day about we're serving alcohol. No one's wearing masks. Everyone's having a good time. And then the Naples news came out the day after the big thing aired that went viral, and they said that people are not going to move to Naples now. They're not going to move to Florida because of us, because we're the super spreader. And it's 2 years later. It's such a joke because there's nowhere that's had the growth that we've had.
No,
the people are speaking. People know.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of real estate in Naples especially has gone up 25-30%, just almost overnight. I mean, it's a hot, not only a hot market. I don't want to, on this show, it gets too much national distribution to rave about how a special place that Naples, Florida is. So I don't want to encourage people to go there except to visit your store, see the table. But it's an extraordinary place with a lot of things going for it. And I think thankfully the elected officials seem to understand how special it is, and they're not going to squeeze it to death, like a lot of other areas around this country have, where too much of a good thing. And I think they've struck a good balance. What I guess as we're talking about, you mentioned election integrity. It's something that I have been very interested in. I have traveled all over this country. I was part of the early Arizona effort after the election to see what had happened there, and saw that, for example, a judge kept open registrations in Maricopa County 10 days after the established deadline by the legislatures in Arizona, and guess what? They were able to win by thousands of votes because they changed the election, and I was encouraged. And I guess where I'm trying to go is I was encouraged that the Supreme Court is going to take up this North Carolina case, which is going to look at the elections clause of the Constitution. You mentioned the Constitution. Look at the elections clause and decide whether it means what it says, which is that the state legislatures are the ones that get to regulate time, place, and manner, or whether judges and election officials and governors get to put their thumb on that scale as well. Is that a case you're tracking at all? And how do you think ultimately that should come out?
Yeah, I really think that the only thing that's going to save us because I think that I think in Florida we're in good shape, right? We've cleaned up our voting rolls, but across the country we still have a long way to go to clean up for election integrity. And there's even a lot more work to do in Florida, but we have almost 400,000 swing in now more Republicans than Democrats. We used to have 300,000 more Democrats than Republicans here in Florida, so it makes it difficult with all the people moving down that are registering as Republicans. But it is a major problem, and we're actually filing a lawsuit. I'm filing a lawsuit in probably around the third week of August, and we're trying to do it in a lot of different states. I'm kind of heading up the Florida end of it. And we're naming the Secretary of State who's in charge of that as a defendant, and we're trying to get them to stop using these machines, because we've got a lot of data in this particular lawsuit, and I haven't been able to even release it yet. And I didn't do the work on it. There's amazing attorneys across the country, and we're going to be filing these everywhere. And I know the other lawsuit that's going on. So I think it's our judicial system that's going to hopefully take care of this, because I even though it's in the body of the legislators for them to correct it, I haven't seen any corrective measure there. So I think by putting it into the courts and making them follow the laws of the Constitution is what's going to put this back in check.
Yeah, and this case is interesting to me that you mentioned. I'm not a lawyer on it. Nobody's hired me to do it. It's something that I've talked to folks about, and I think it's important, before we get labeled that we're sort of crazy conspiracy theory advocates. Remember, DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, has said that there are vulnerabilities to these voting machines, and I think that should concern everyone. That what those vulnerabilities might be, and we should also point to the country of France that hand counts their ballots and has an election result the night of the election. And yet, we watched, I'm sure you did as I did, some of these election results not only, continue to evolve over time, but, weren't ultimately completed till a week or two after the election. And some of these things, you're right, courts are tightening up. The Wisconsin Supreme Court just tightened up Wisconsin's law because, the legislature passed certain restrictions on absentee ballots and the collection of absentee ballots and the like, and those policies were ignored. That law was ignored by the people administering the election, and I think those are the issues that we face, Alfie, as we head into 22 into 24, and the good news is I don't think that the conservatives are asleep anymore on this issue. We don't blindly trust that these elections are going to go off without a hitch, especially as much as the rules were changed by inconsistent, I would argue, with the Constitution.
Absolutely. I mean, the things that I know, I could go on for hours. I mean, some of the most egregious that I know of is and many people aren't aware of this, but there's a system shamefully named after Albert Einstein that's called Albert. That's a piece of a device that's hooked up to almost all the supervisor elections in the country. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's about 2,230 counties in the country, and 2,109 of them have this Albert apparatus hooked up to them. It's supposedly to protect the supervisor elections voting rolls from being attacked from China or Russia. Well, through that mechanism, the IP addresses came over, and this isn't really theft. Is what makes it so difficult. Is will go into the inactive voters and then push them into active, and then mail-in ballots are set out. So it's almost like getting everything. Like if you're going to steal all the product out of my store, pushing all the product out the door, but until someone makes the fake ballot, it's not really a complete theft. And we have proof of that. We had a team of lawyers that were working and showing where those IP addresses jumped over, and it's a master and slave system and came into it. So we have to, as citizens, we have to, in every one of your precincts or your supervised elections, go, and you have to go raise some hell with the people with your supervised election and say, like, what can you do to secure this? And it really comes down to, more than anything, of cleaning up the voter rolls that are down there, the inactive voters that are there almost intentionally, I believe, and they need to be taken off, because without that, it really mitigates so much more of that theft that we've had. And there's multiple ways. There's hundreds of ways as we've seen with 2,000 Mules and a lot of the other things that we've watched over the last 2 years. There's lots of fraud, different ways to do fraud, but cleaning the voting rolls is a very common sense. And I really do believe that it's not a partisan issue. Both sides of the aisle want their vote to count.
Yeah.
If we lose that, then we lose America.
We want to make voting easy and cheating hard. And, one of the things that I think has been sort of funny coming out of 2020 is the media used to say there's no evidence of fraud. And now they say there's no evidence that there was enough fraud to change the election. And the question then for that theme is, well, how much fraud is acceptable? And the answer should be, like you said, a nonpartisan answer. Fraud is not acceptable. And if you're one party, let's say the Democrats, and you are okay with enough fraud that just doesn't tip elections, that should tell you everything you want to know. I mean, if you're one party's for fraud and the other party's against fraud in the elections, then that should kind of suggest which party is the party of good faith and fair dealing, and which is trying to win elections at any cost because of, I would argue, their radical agenda that emanates from the big cities. And you see it, I mean, I'm sure you see it in Florida. I see it in Iowa. We had counties like where my mom and dad were from in Lee County, which is far southeast Iowa, where it had been blue for a generation. And, after 2016 and Donald Trump and a realization by these good folks in Lee County, places, well, actually I'm going to be there this Saturday, the places like Fort Madison and Keokuk and these great river towns on the Mississippi River, they realized that the Democrats and the left offered nothing for their continued success and jobs and business creation and all the kind of things that the conservatives deliver. So, we're running out of time, Alfie. Is there anything else you want to share with my nationwide audience here on Liberty and Justice before we wrap up?
I just think, I always share with everyone, these are extreme times, and everyone's got to get out there and do their part. And it doesn't matter, what background you come from. There's something that you can do, and we're doing this for our children. We're not doing this for us as much as like our founding fathers laid this amazing foundation for us, and they stood up and they put their lives on the line. And most of them had a lot of hardships. If you do the history, if anyone in the show's never watched Paul Harvey's Founding Fathers on YouTube, it's a great 10-minute watch. But they've drawn a line in the sand here. I do believe that this administration does not represent the will of the majority of the people in this country, and the only way that the only possible way for them to stay in power is through election fraud. And that's why it's my number one agenda is to I'm obviously involved in my local elections, which I know we're going to be successful with. But as a nation, if we don't fix this, we're going to lose the country.
Yeah. Well. Thank you, Alfie Oakes, for joining me today on Liberty and Justice. If you ever find yourself in Naples, Florida, make sure you stop by Seed to Table and say hello to Alfie and his 80,000 square foot mecca to freshness and freedom.
Freedom, I like that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And remember,
you might have coined a new term.
Every Friday, 7 p.m., you can catch us on CPAC Now. Otherwise, Whitaker.tv is the best place. And if you like podcasts, go to iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else. My guest has been Alfie Oakes. What's the best way to find you online? Oakes?
So I have alfieforamerica.com.
Okay.
Is ALFIE for America.com. I did a 1 hour Tucker Carlson video that's right. It's on there.
Awesome.
But Alfie Oakes is my name, ALFIE, and then Oakes with an E, OAKES. But we've got a lot of material out there, and we're always putting new whatever's going on that's new and exciting.
All right. Well,
website.
Alfie, thanks for being on Liberty and Justice, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt.